Hey guys, we're going to get started with question number 20 on the back side of the study guide. I'm going to try and do my best to make it shorter. It starts by saying that angle XYZ and angle XYW are complementary. So that means that they're 90 degrees. The two together, they add to 90. So I'm going to take angle XYZ over here, and I'm going to write in that it's 3x plus 9, 3x plus 9. And then take XYW and write in that it's 5x plus 9. Okay, it says, what are the measures of the two angles? Well, we know that complementary is 90, so I'm going to take 3x plus 9 and add it to 5x plus 9 and set it equal to 90 because it's complementary. I'm then going to combine my like terms. So here's my 3 and here's my 5, and here's my 9 and my other 9. It'll be simplified down to 8x plus 18 equals 90. I'm going to continue solving, so I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides to get 8x alone, and I'll end up with 8x equals 72. I need to divide by 8 to get x completely alone, and I'll get 8x equals 9. Okay, that's just x though, right? It wants me to solve for xyz and xyw. I'm going to go ahead and plug those in. So I'm going to move the paper a little bit over, that way you can see it, and plug it in. The first one I'm going to solve is angle xyz. Angle xyz. And let's not forget that angle XYZ equaled 3x, but we know that x is 9, so I'm going to put a 9 in there now, plus 9. So I'm going to go ahead and solve that. 3 times 9 is 27, and then plus 9. Well, 27 plus 9 is 36. So I now know that the measure of angle XYZ equals 36. And there we go. That's XYZ. We'll move it over a little bit so that we can solve angle XYW. And if you remember, that was 5 times x, which is 9, don't forget, plus 9. So 5 times 9 is 45, and then we add the 9, and we end up with 54. So the measure of angle XYW equals 54 degrees. And if you wanted to double check, you could do 36 plus 54, and when you add them up, they equal 90 degrees, which is what a complementary angle is. So therefore, it works, it's right. We're going to move down now to number 21, and we're talking about supplementary angles this time. Remember that supplementary angles add up to 180. Okay? So what we're going to do is we are going to see that the measure of DEF is 20 degrees less than 3 times the measure of angle ABC. What are the measures of ABC and DEF? These are one of those really hard problems where I suggest that you work backwards. So what we're going to do is we are going to know that these two angles, when we add them together, equal 180 degrees. All right, and let's remember that there's two sets of angles here. Right, the first angle, we don't know what it is, so we're just going to call it a variable, and we're going to say that that variable is x. All right, and then we're going to read, and we're going to work backwards, so 20 degrees less than 3 times the measure of angle ABC. So 20 degrees less, whatever it is, we're going to subtract 20. All right, so minus 20, and then 3 times the measure. So here's our measure. We have to multiply it by 3. So 3 times minus 20. And that's our equation. That's how we would set it up. So the next thing you would want to do in solving this would be to actually solve it. We're going to combine like terms and end up with 4x minus 20 equals 180. I want to get that 4x alone, so I'm going to subtract or add 20 and add 20. I will have 4x equals 200, and then I need to divide by 4 to get my x alone, and I will get x equals 50. So that's my x. But it says, what is the measure of angle ABC and DEF? So ABC, that was our original angle, right? X. Well, we just found out that x is equal to 50. So we're going to say angle ABC equals 50 degrees. And then the measure of DEF, remember, was 20 degrees less than 3 times the measure of ABC. 20 degrees less than 3 times the measure. So for DEF, we are going to do 3 times our x, which was 50, minus 20. Well, 3 times 50 is 150, and we subtract 20, and we end up with 130 degrees. So angle DEF equals 130. And again, if you wanted to add them together and double check that it equals 180, you would do 130 plus 50 added together equals 180 degrees. They check out. Okay, so we're going to move down along. I'm losing the paper here. And draw this figure for number 22 like it suggests. So here's our angle, and we're going to label it RST, R, S, and T. And we're going to draw this arrow through it, Q, because Q is the bisector. Don't forget when you see the word bisector that means that these two angles were chopped directly in half, that ninja move, remember? So now we're going to look at the information that they give us. They say, trying to find a good spot on the screen here, that QST, this angle right here, is equal to 2x plus 18. All right, and then they say that RST, the entire angle, this entire angle is equal to 6x minus 2. All right, guys, we've talked a lot about this. When this is 2x plus 18 and we know that they're congruent, we can go ahead and do 2x plus 18 over here. They're congruent because they're bisected. So to solve this, we're going to take 2x plus 18 plus 2x plus 18 and set it equal to 6x minus 2. That would be 4x plus 36 equals 6x minus 2. All right, I'm going to move my x's over and move my constants over, and I will end up with 38 equals 2x. And now I need to divide by 2 and divide by 2. And I'll figure out that x equals 19. Okay, the angle it was asking me for, though, was RSQ. So now I'm going to look back over here at RSQ, and we use 2x plus 18 for that. So now I can just take my x over here, 19, and plug it in. 2 times 19 plus 18. Okay, and when I multiply 2 times 19 and add 18, I end up with 56 degrees. So the measure of angle RSQ equals 56 degrees. And that is how you would do this one. Okay. Moving down to number 23, 24, and 25. 2 longish problems. For 23 and 24, it says the distance between the points to the nearest tenth. Okay, rather than do that, I want you guys to just leave it as a radical for now. If it asks for something different on the test, I'll let you know. But for now, just leave it as a radical. So what I'm going to start by doing is labeling my points. I'm going to call this x1, and this y1, and this x2, and this y2. And I'm just going to do it for 24 while I'm at it. x1 and y1 and x2 and y2. Okay, and I need to know my formulas. So the distance formula, let's see if I can find a place to write it. you guys really need to memorize is y2 minus y1. Oops, and that is not showing up. In parentheses, squared, plus x2 minus x1 in parentheses and squared. So that's the distance. The midpoint formula is a little different. It is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then y1 plus y2 also divided by 2. Okay, those are our two formulas, and that's what we're doing for this. So for the distance, I'm going to take these points and just go ahead and plug them into my equation. I will put it under a radical to start and do 10 minus negative 4. It's going to be squared. Add it to 6 minus negative 7, and that's going to be squared. Don't forget, when you have these two negatives side by side, it becomes a positive. So these two will become positives. When I add 10 plus 4, it becomes 14. And when I add 6, and we're going to have to square that, 6 plus 7, it's going to be 13. Well, 14 squared is 196, and 13 squared is 169. When I add them together, I get 365. And please just leave it like that for now. So my answer would be radical 365. Okay, now we need to do the midpoint. So again, I'm going to take these points, how I labeled them. I'm going to take my x's first, so negative 7 plus 6, and divide it by 2. And then I will take my other x's here, my y's now, negative 4, add it to 10, and divide by 2. All right, this will become negative 1/2, and negative 4 plus 10 is 6 over 2, and I'm going to go ahead and simplify this one. This one I can't simplify, so I would have negative 1/2 and a positive 3. So negative 1/2 and a positive 3 for this one. And then moving over here to 24. Again, I get to do the distance formula. So I'm going to plug it in, all the points that I need, add them together. And I'm running out of room on my screen. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to look at my y's. I'm going to do negative 11 minus negative 1. And I'm going to take negative 5 and subtract negative 8. All right, and let's remember here, two negatives become a positive. So I will have negative 11 plus 1, and that's going to be a negative 10. That's going to have to be squared. And I'm going to have a negative 5 plus 8, and that's going to be 3, and that's going to have to be squared. Okay, 10 squared is 100. 3 squared is 9. Don't forget square root. 109. Rad 109 would be your distance. And it's totally fine to leave it that way. Rad 109. And then we jump to our midpoint. Okay, so again, in parentheses, all over 2, all over 2, I'm going to take my x values. Negative 8 plus negative 5, and negative 1 plus negative 11. All right, negative 5 and negative 8 is negative 13 over 2. Well, that one can't be simplified. And then I have negative 1 and negative 11, which is negative 12 over 2. This one can be simplified, and it becomes negative 6. So my answer is negative 13 over 2 and negative 6. All right, let's move down to the very last problem on your study guide. Woohoo, you guys have made it so far. Okay, it said a map of a city suburb show the airport located A, 2511. An ambulance is on a straight expressway headed from the airport to Grant Hospital. This sounds bad, guys. G, 11. The ambulance gets a flat tire at the midpoint M of AG. This is a very dark question. What are the coordinates of the midpoint? So here we have A and G, and right here in the middle is our midpoint, which we're trying to figure out. A is 25, 11, and G is 1, 1. So we're going to find the midpoint first. Whoops, sorry, you couldn't really see that diagram. I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay, so what are the coordinates of M? We're going to use the midpoint formula to find that. And remember, we just had lots of practice with it up there. So we're going to add our two x values, 25 plus 1, and divide by 2. And our two y values, 11 plus 1, and divide by 2. So 26 over 2 and 12 over 2. 26 divided by 2 is 13, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So M equals 13, 6. Okay, so that's question A. We did that. How far does the helicopter now that it has a flat tire, the ambulance, they have to resort to the helicopter, this must be some serious emergency going on, to get from M, the midpoint, to G, the hospital. Assume all the coordinates are in miles. So how far? That means we're going to have to use our distance formula. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to find the distance from our midpoint to G, where the hospital is, at 1, 1. So we're going to use our distance formula and plug in the information. We're going to take our y, which was 1, or y2, minus 13, and square it, and add it to our x, which was 1, minus 6, and square that. Well, 1 minus 13 is negative 12, and that will still be squared. And 1 minus 6 is negative 5, and that still needs to be squared. Okay, 12 squared is 144. Remember, it was negative. Negative times a negative is a positive, so positive 144. And negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. All right, we add those two together. We get 169. Hopefully you can recognize that that's a perfect square, and it is equal to 13. So the distance the helicopter would have to travel is 13 miles. Congratulations, you made it through the end of your video. Now, hopefully, you are closer to being ready for the test.